Anyways, what's up, y'all? It's just most Decimus. Jacrispy, back in the video. Brewski! Why the Journey franchise died. Let's see what's going on with this. If you're new to the channel, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, follow our social media. It's going to pop on the screen. We're on the road to 500. 500 if y'all ain't see it. Y'all know, if you know, you know. We always watch Brewski when Brewski posts, you know. Last time we watched Brewski was Holes. If y'all didn't watch that, then go ahead and watch that. But in general, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend, to a family that your boy Jacrispy on his way to the top, and let's get it.
In Hollywood, studios don't just walk away from a successful franchise, and Journey had almost everything going for it.
There's nothing like they've ever seen before, and it's the new wave of technology and the new wave of filmmaking.
Big stars, strong box office numbers, and an endless supply of stories to adapt from author Jules Verne. It could have been a money-making machine for Warner Brothers, but between cast shakeups, stalled sequels, bankrupt studios, and creative conflicts, the franchise collapsed before it ever really got started.
The first movie, Journey to the Center of the Earth, was a good movie. We had an opportunity to make it better.
Jules Verne is one of the most important names in science fiction history. He's often cited alongside writers like H.G. Wells and Mary Shelley for pioneering the genre. His impact was so profound that during the Apollo 11 mission, as the crew was returning from the moon, Neil Armstrong paid tribute to Verne live on air.
Good evening. This is the commander of Apollo 11. 100 years ago, Jules Verne wrote a book about a voyage to the moon.
Sci-fi equals Verne, but much of it leaned heavily into fantasy and impossible scenarios. Verne's approach was different. He grounded his imaginative adventure stories in real scientific theories and contemporary knowledge of the field. He focused less on magic and more on technology. My object has been to depict the Earth, and not the Earth alone, but the universe. And I have tried at the same time to realize a very high ideal of beauty, of style. It is said that there can't be any style in a novel of adventure, but it isn't true. Newspapers from Verne's era described him as a magician-like evoker of strange scenes by sea, sky, and land. He's best known for a series of 54 novels called Voyages Extraordinaires, which began in 1863 and featured iconic stories like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and From the Earth to the Moon. They were exciting adventures with vivid visual descriptions, so when the 20th century arrived, Verne's stories naturally became perfect material for cinema. The first sci-fi movie ever made, A Trip to the Moon, was inspired by a Jules Verne novel, and in the decades since, his books have been adapted time and time again across film, television, and animation. One of the stories adapted most often was his third novel, Journey to the Center of the Earth. The book was first published in 1864 and quickly became a massive hit. It was a thrilling lost world narrative that stood out for being unusually grounded for its time. The first time it was adapted into a feature-length film was in 1959.
Oh!
The film wasn't.
And she just standing there, not backing up, not at least trying to move. She just screaming. Like, screaming was going to make it 10 times better. Like, I don't get that. I don't understand that. Like, why you sat there and just start screaming to the top of your lungs and then just not try to move back?
Entirely faithful to the source material, but it was well received and became known for its groundbreaking special effects. Over the years, the story was reimagined through several films, TV movies, and shows, but none were able to top the 1959 classic. But by 2001, Walden Media felt enough time had passed to try again. The studio announced that Eric Brevig had been hired to direct a new adaptation of Journey to the Center of the Earth. This time around, the filmmakers had two main goals. One was to modernize the story. The novel was more than a century old, and it had been nearly 50 years since the last major film adaptation. Despite its legacy, Brevig believed the older version felt way out of date for today's audiences. Half the journey was just getting to Iceland, and they walk for months to the center of the Earth. The fantastic part is when they're down there, so we kept—
I'm just gonna keep it a buck. Nowadays, bro, I bet you can't even get about 5 to 7 dudes to walk with you to the center, somehow, some way into the center of Earth, and trying to find some new stuff. I promise you, saying everybody be like a lonely trip to yourself, or probably you and somebody like 3-4 other dudes. I don't even think the other people where you come. They'll just try to flake on you.
the spirit of it, but modernized it. On top of that, the filmmakers wanted to use the story's framework to experiment with cutting-edge technology. In the early 2000s, 3D movies had developed a reputation for being gimmicky. They relied on cheap tricks like objects flying directly at the camera rather than genuine immersion or storytelling. Movies like Spy Kids 3D often required flimsy red and blue glasses that caused headaches and, for many, an uncomfortable experience. But around this time,
I know that's right, bro. Golly, bro. At least I'm not the only one. The freaking 3D glasses used to give me a headache and stuff. Then that stuff used to be messing up with my ears and stuff like that. Ain't no joke, bro.
Was beginning to shift toward digital 3D. Unlike older anaglyph technology, which produced dark, distorted colors, digital 3D created a much cleaner and more realistic image. When viewers removed the glasses, the picture appeared blurry, instead of splitting into a harsh red and blue mess. Some animated films had already experimented with digital, but Journey to the Center of the Earth became the first live-action feature shot using the Fusion camera system. Basically, it used two cameras at the same time, allowing them to preview the 3D effect while filming and make adjustments in real time. The idea was to present the audience with things that they've never seen before. The technology helped pave the way for modern 3D movies. This was the same system that James Cameron would later use.
It's not saying they still don't use 3D, because yes, they do. Look at Avatar. Somehow, some way, that series is still going on and on and on. Like, do you know Avatar got a 2031 movie already out? I don't even know we don't even know what the plot is. 2031. How old you think you will be in 2031 when that Avatar drop? Go look it up. I'm not lying to y'all. And allegedly they got one in 2028. I think 2028 too. So it's gotta be like an every 2-year gap or something like that. I don't know.
Making Avatar. James had helped develop the camera system himself, and according to multiple reports, Journey to the Center of the Earth served as a practical test run for Avatar. He'd visit the set to watch his prototype in action.
He actually wound up being the first one to use the brand spanking new Fusion camera system that I was itching to get my hands on.
When it came to developing and marketing the film, the 3D experience became a major focus.
This is the first live-action, feature-length, narrative-driven, high-definition, preconceived, and delivered 3D film ever made.
It was filmmaking of the future.
Yeah, you like it? Yeah, whoa.
It hasn't been presented to an audience this way in cinema history.
Cameras that have never been used before.
All in high-def 3D.
It provides for a more fulfilling experience as a cinema goer.
In fact, without it, Brendan Fraser wouldn't have even signed on for the lead role. And years later, the effects crew would be very grateful that he did. I thought 3D was when you wore red and blue glasses and watched the movie and it made you a little bit queasy after a while, and you went home and said, why did I spend my money for that? Anyway, let's get back to paying taxes and stuff. I wasn't sure what the technology held, but I was hooked on the idea of it. Fraser admitted that when he first received the script, he didn't think much of it, but after reading the book himself, he became more involved in the creative process and helped tune up the screenplay.
So I read the screenplay, and it needed some help.
I had not read the book when I saw the screenplay, so I ran off, I got a copy of it.
Right.
And compared the screenplay and the book and went, you know what, I think we can build on these character relationships a little bit better, pitch some ideas. Studio said, hey, nice job. They made me an executive producer. Very happy about that.
Needless to say, it was an extremely effects-heavy production. Aside from a few days of location shooting in Iceland and Canada, most of the film was shot in front of blue screens. Eric Brevig had to figure out how to build 40 sets on 4 stages. The actors later noted that it was difficult having to interact with and fight creatures that weren't actually there.
Well, with lots of green screen work, is that hard for you as an actor to actually picture them there working with you?
It is. You know, it's weird having to imagine that just by this green screen behind you with a tennis ball, that's a giant dinosaur and you have to be screaming for your life. But
the raft sequence was especially rough. It took 5 days to film and required the actors to constantly be drenched with water.
When I watched the raft sequence in this and remember how miserable we were for 5 days standing underneath these rain machines, you know, battling invisible fish, like sucking wind like you would not believe.
By the end of production, there were multiple injuries on set, but Brendan Fraser got the worst of it. On the 3rd day of shooting, he burned his hand from getting too close to an exploding magnesium flare, and they had to shut down for 2 days. Later on, Fraser hurt his back. He was on a big rig and got smacked in the tailbone. He took the brunt of the injuries, but everyone got scrapes and bruises from brushing against concrete and plaster. The project was announced in 2001, but between the ambitious visual effects, experimental technology, and production delays, filming didn't wrap until 2006. To make matters worse, after years of demanding work, the VFX artists ended up getting completely blindsided. Canadian company Meteor Studios declared bankruptcy immediately after finishing work on Journey to the Center of the Earth in 2007. At the time, the studio reportedly owed employees around $1.3 million in unpaid wages. They tried bringing attention to the situation.
Nah, that's crazy. Imagine you getting that much money back. Oh wow, son! I know they was freaking filthy rich that day. Boy, $1.3 million. You know what I could do with that right now? Boy, that would change my life, bro. I promise you, that would change my life.
Through media, but the story went unnoticed. For a while, the artists remained uncompensated. It was still released on July 11th, 2008. In most ways, Journey to the Center of the Earth was a success. It grossed $244 million against a budget of $60 million. And while critics felt the story was lacking, audiences were largely won over by the 3D experience. There was corny dialogue, uneven visual effects, and a completely forced romance subplot. It was undeniably schlocky. But all in all, it was a fun family adventure, and the kind of movie that feels increasingly rare today. Fans of the book didn't get a faithful adaptation because that's not what the film was trying to be. In the movie, Verne's novel exists in universe and serves as the catalyst for their adventure.
Someone got out and someone told Verne.
The book was a slow burn and took a lot of time for the journey to really get started. It also featured a wider variety of creatures and plant life, including mastodons and giants. The film, meanwhile, includes a T-Rex, something never mentioned in the source material and hadn't even been discovered when Verne wrote the novel. But at the end of the day, the movie worked best as a lighthearted popcorn adventure rather than a faithful adaptation.
Let's keep it a buck. So y'all rather prefer nasty, ugly creatures or dinosaurs? Them dinosaurs low-key kind of peak. I can just imagine you see that little nasty thing off the what that movie called? It started with a G. But then one of them kids had saw that little nasty creatures. It was like a bunch of kids stuck in a cave or something like that. Start with a G though. If one of y'all know what I'm talking about.
Film's release, the VFX artists were still fighting to receive the money they were owed. Dave Rand, who worked as an effects lead at Meteor Studios, repeatedly tried to get the attention of the Hollywood press. No one wanted to touch the story. My guess was the studio had put pressure on them to bury it. Eventually, Rand managed to get in contact with someone at Page Six, who published an article in 2008 detailing what had happened to him and the other employees.
Oh, wow.
Shortly after the story went live, Rand received a call from an unknown number. "This is Brendan Fraser. What the fuck is going on?" Fraser had no idea the artists working on the film hadn't been paid. He listened intently, asked a lot of questions, and promised he would call me regularly until this was solved. Brendan thought what happened was awful and was extremely upset. He publicly campaigned for the artists, making calls left and right. Nearly 2 years later, the workers finally received around 80% of the money they were owed. Rand later said, "We'd had none, but Mr. Fraser gave us wings. He's a righteous dude." Unfortunately, though, Brendan Fraser was going through serious struggles of his own. By the late 2000s, his Hollywood career had begun to slow down dramatically. In 2003, Fraser alleged that he had been sexually assaulted by Philip Burke, the former president of the Hollywood Foreign Press, during a luncheon at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Fraser later claimed that after speaking out and demanding an apology, he had been quietly blacklisted within the industry. Then, in 2007, Brendan and his wife, Afton Smith, announced their separation after 9 years of marriage. The divorce became financially draining, with Fraser reportedly required to pay tens of thousands of dollars each month in alimony and child support. At the same time, years of performing his own stunts had begun taking a severe physical toll. Fraser dealt with multiple injuries from films like The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, along with other back injuries and ongoing health problems that required surgeries. Between the trauma, declining health, financial pressure, and a string of poorly received projects, Fraser's career was in a rough patch. Furry Vengeance, which came out in 2010, earned $36 million on a budget of $35 million. It was a critical disaster. He had seen some major success with films like The Mummy years before, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to find solid roles. A sequel to Journey to the Center of the Earth could have been exactly what Brendan Fraser needed at the time. Another big-budget action-adventure film with his name attached might have helped revitalize his career, but that's not how things played out. Warner Bros. Was eager to move quickly on a sequel, and needed production deadlines met. During this period, director Eric Brevig was already committed to working on Yogi Bear for the same studio. Fraser reportedly only wanted to return if Brevig was directing again, but Eric ultimately couldn't make the timeline work and was replaced by Brad Payton. Supposedly,
I ain't lying. Yogi Bear.
Fraser declined.
Hold on, Yogi Bear is actually a good movie. I'm not gonna hold that. That was actually a good movie.
To return out of loyalty to Brevig, though there's little evidence he was ever formally asked back in the first place. In 2010, Screen Rant predicted Fraser might return for a reduced salary after several recent flops, but not only was he absent for the sequel, the new film barely acknowledged his character at all. In September 2010, it was announced that Dwayne Johnson would replace Brendan Fraser as the franchise's lead. Throughout the 2000s, Johnson was establishing himself as a reliable blockbuster star with major box office appeal. And from a commercial standpoint,
I don't know, son. Every time The Rock getting in the movie, saying it'd be 50-50. It's either be good or bad, bro. Low key.
The studio saw him as the perfect successor to Fraser.
The first movie, Journey to the Center of the Earth, was a good movie that did great around the world in terms of box office. We had an opportunity to make it better.
The ending of the first film teased that Sean and Trevor would eventually journey to the lost city of Atlantis together.
Lost city of Atlantis?
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk.
Before handing Sean the book, Trevor asks, "What do you say we take a couple weeks next time?" But when the sequel rolled around, the only reference to Sean's uncle was a small piece of text hanging on his wall. Obviously, movie characters don't need to constantly mention every family member who isn't around, but the sequel barely even acknowledged Trevor's absence or explained why he wasn't part of the adventure. It felt pretty clear that the filmmakers wanted to distance themselves from the character. Not only that, Sean was the only character from the first film to return. Even his mom was recast. Journey to the Mysterious Island took a different approach from the first movie. While it was named after the Mysterious Island by Jules Verne, the story pulled from multiple classic adventure novels rather than adapting a single book. The plot combined elements from Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift, and Verne's The Mysterious Island. Verne's book served as the main foundation for the story, but certain elements were from the other novels. The oversized and miniature animals resembled ideas from Gulliver's Travels, while the island's hidden gold was more reminiscent of Treasure Island. The Rock took over as Sean's stepfather, an ex-Navy codebreaker. The movie also introduced more characters, including Sean's grandfather, played by Michael Caine. Journey 2 wasn't exactly an upgrade from the first one, but it's hard to call it a downgrade either. It premiered February 10th, 2012, and while reviews were about the same, it did manage to outgross Journey to the Center of the Earth. The movie also leaned heavily into 3D once again, and unsurprisingly, the visual effects had improved considerably. It also helped that much more of the film was shot on location in Oahu, Hawaii. In some ways, it benefited from having a larger cast, even if many of the characters were flat and weighed down by corny dialogue. Still, there were standout scenes.
That is the peck pop of love. Now go on and throw a berry.
No.
Early on, they jokingly foreshadowed the idea of going to the moon.
Oh, alright, cool. Hey, can you stop by the moon and grab me a Slurpee?
And at the end, it's very clearly setting up a sequel based on From the Earth to the Moon, another classic from Jules Verne. Michael Caine's character delivers the book and suggests that they all go on the journey as a family. The camera then pulls out of the house and flies through space, ending on a shot of the moon. It was a much more blatant setup than the first movie. They undoubtedly had plans for another installment. Journey 3 went into development shortly after the second movie was released. But then months went by. Then years went by, and nothing.
What is the status of Journey 3?
We are working on a script. They're working on a script for 3 and 4. There's no official status, but it's one of those things we chip away at, and I'm gonna I think do a meeting on it next week. So we're still figuring it out.
The franchise didn't have a huge fan.
Yeah, he's not about to do that. Y'all not getting that to no time soon.
Fan base, but both films were solid hits, so it was strange that the series seemed to be quietly abandoned. For a long time, people wondered about a new installment, but never received a clear answer. Until January 2nd, 2018, when a fan reached out to Dwayne Johnson on Twitter. "Hello, Mr. Johnson. I'm 15 years old and using my father's account with his permission, and I had a question for you. I really enjoy the Journey movies and was just wondering if there are any plans to make Journey 3 still, as they are my favorite. Thank you for your time, Nathan." Johnson replied, "Hey big man, good to see you asked your dad's permission to use his account. Unfortunately, I have no plans to make another Journey movie. My goal to make Jules Verne's From the Earth to the Moon became a real challenge to crack creatively. Thanks for being such a cool fan." So, between creative difficulties and Dwayne Johnson's busy schedule, the series died with Journey to the Mysterious Island. If they did a third movie without him, it would have been pretty ridiculous, having another main character just disappear. It's hard to even call Journey a franchise. It never really had a strong fan base to begin with, and when so much of the first film was ignored, continuity between entries just fell apart. With almost the entire cast replaced just one film later, it lost any real momentum and started to feel more like a soft reboot than a true sequel. The series faded out almost as quickly as it began, never really given the chance to grow into a franchise at all. It didn't have the best critical reception, but neither did something like Fast and Furious, which is still ongoing to this day. Journey to the Center of the Earth had some groundbreaking 3D technology, and it was also the first movie to introduce the 4DX format a year after it premiered.
Well, that's Journey. That's really the reason why. But hey, hope y'all enjoyed this video. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Follow our social media, pop on the screen. We're on the road to 500. I'm out. That's Bruce.